I've always grown up in the church, you know, Wednesday night youth groups, missions trips every summer, every winter. The church has always been kind of like my second home. When I was 5, my family moved to England to be missionaries. And then in about 8th grade, my dad told us that he was becoming a pastor. What I didn't expect, along with his pastoral duties, was the eyes and ears of everyone in the church. It was kind of a different world all of a sudden that I wasn't really used to. And it was at that time where I was just kind of getting to know myself and getting to know who I was, so I wasn't exactly ready for it. While my parents never directly put pressure on me or anything to be the perfect child, they didn't really need to, because I always felt like I needed to be perfect. So, going into high school, I was still kind of getting the hang of this whole pastor's daughter thing, and my perception of myself and of my body and of how I looked started to turn really, really bad. And I started to get these really, really horrible eating habits, and I started to pick up bulimia. I remember I'd always hear about people like that, and I was just like, how can they be so stupid? I don't understand. But I was one of them. I'd kept that a secret for a while until one of my friends found out, and she told me that if I didn't tell my mom, then she would. It was definitely the last thing I ever wanted to do. You never want to tell your mom that you're bulimic or that you have a problem that makes you not perfect. So I went into her room and I told her, and she didn't freak out, she didn't throw a fit, she didn't blame me for anything. She just kind of took me in her arms and told me everything was going to be okay, and we prayed about it and we talked about it for a long time. We thought of a plan together to help me get through it day by day, and that plan worked. And you know, I got over it in time, and everything in that area of my life was okay, but that hole I felt in my heart, like it just wasn't gone. So my sophomore year, that summer going into my junior year, I got into a group of friends that were doing things I just knew weren't right, and I started dating this guy, and there was so much pressure with him, and I always knew I wasn't going to have sex before I was married. That was just a given. But I wanted to please him because I thought, you know, he could fill that void that I felt in my heart, and he would be able to make me feel better. Because, you know, I thought he was my solution. He was my answer. And he became my main focus instead of God. In the end, it still wasn't enough for him, and he broke things off, and I was devastated, and I was broken, and I didn't know what to do. About my middle of my junior year, my oldest brother was pretty much a poster child for perfection. He was great looking, everyone loved him, the nicest guy ever. He had everything going for him. And then my middle brother, he'd always been kind of just the one in the shadows. And he moved out that year, and he started partying a lot and started denying everything that had to do with God. And it really took a big toll on me and my family and my parents for the most part. And I knew my parents felt like they'd failed in some way. I could just see how my parents were breaking and how much it hurt them. And I just knew that I didn't want to be like that. I was devastated. I was broken. I didn't know what to do. That hole I felt in my heart. Jesus was the thing that I was missing in my heart.
When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions.
I haven't had the past most kids have got to experience. I grew up living with my mother, in Palmdale, California. She struggled with drug addiction and just schizophrenia, and kind of just didn't really know, I don't think was ready to raise children. I grew up being abused physically and verbally at a very young age. It was almost like she didn't care about me. She treated me as if I wasn't her son. Not only did I not have my mom, I had no clue who my dad was. On my birth certificate it said unknown. I lived with her for a while, and luckily one day a police officer had came and just taken me out of that environment and put me in a shelter for a few days. My grandparents came and took me out, and I stayed with them, and after a long fight and battle, my grandparents got full custody of me. My grandma and grandpa were also alcoholics. They also had their struggles, and it was kind of like another thing thrown in my path. I started to struggle about self-image, how I looked at myself, because I felt I was a bad person, or I did something to deserve all these things that were coming my way. One day I remember I was coming home from school, and I remember seeing my sister at the wall waiting for me, which I knew something wasn't right because she never waited for me. I would usually just walk home. Our mom had passed away. Again, I felt abandoned. I was like, why would she leave me? Why would she do this to me? And I just felt hurt, broken, just not liked, I guess. I just felt alone. We were hit with another obstacle, and that was my grandma getting cancer. It was possible that they could get rid of it. And eventually it was gone. They told us it was gone. Later on that year, she had passed away. From what I know, she went in and got the surgery, and the doctor cut her gallbladder, which infected her whole body. All I remember is everyone just telling me, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, it's not okay. It's not okay, I'm alone. And my grandfather started going into a extremely bad depression. He wouldn't come out of his room for days. He was in his room drinking, wasn't eating, wasn't feeding me, wasn't worried about how I was doing. So finally I didn't want to be home. So I kind of just started hanging out with this guy Robert, and hardly ever come home. We started out hanging out as friends, and then just started drinking every once in a while, and then every day. And eventually it just started getting so bad that I was stealing from my grandfather so I could get the things I wanted. He found out, and he was extremely mad, and he said, oh, you're going to live with your aunt. And so I got scared, and I left, and I ran away. Social services called my aunt and said that if she didn't find me before they did, that they were going to pick me up and take me into a foster home. So she drove down from Orange County and searched all over and finally found me. And for me, it was extremely difficult because I didn't know her. I only met her twice. It was almost like I was just living with a stranger. I lived here, and it was kind of a different lifestyle moving from where I was at to moving to Orange County. So I kind of struggled with more issues, struggled with fitting in and feeling like I was liked. The beginning of my freshman year, I started drinking and smoking pot with my older cousin. And it went from being an every once in a while thing to every other day to every day. And I had always told myself, no, I'm not going to do drugs, but that's what my mom did. No, no, no. He asked me if I wanted to try ecstasy. I told him yeah, and it just kind of became a normal thing every other weekend, and it just brought me downhill even faster. When I did it, everything went away. All the pain that I had was gone. The hole that was inside, it just wasn't there. It was fixed for temporarily, but later on, little did I realize later on, it stayed just as deep. I was just putting it off. Finally, my aunt found out what was going on, and she had sent me to an inpatient rehabilitation center. And I stayed there for about 6 months. And the whole time I was there, I was BSing it. I didn't want to be there. I just couldn't do it. And so finally I left from the rehab center and tried going home. But my aunt didn't want me home because I didn't complete the program. So she took me to a shelter, and I felt, why doesn't she want me? Why can't I go? I felt just abandoned again. Luckily, one day I met this man named Scott, and he kind of told me a little bit about church and a little bit about God, and asked me if I was interested in going. And I guess to try and please him, I told him yes. And I went, and I actually liked it. But it was almost like I was living two lives. I would be a Christian at church, but when I would leave, I was a different person. I felt abandoned, just hurt, broken, just not wanted.